Hello, folks. Welcome to another Letters to an Asexual. This is Swank Ivy, and we are on number 108. Today I'm going to talk about a comment that some of you may have heard if you were asexual or aromantic. Have you ever had someone say, I wish I was asexual, or I wish I was aromantic? I had a couple people ask me how I speak to that or what I say in response to that kind of question on Tumblr. And these were sent as submitted questions. And I'm just going to read you exactly what they asked me and then how I advised them to address it and think about it. And we'll see if I have anything to elaborate on after I'm done. One anonymous person asked this question: what would you say to somebody who said they wished they were asexual/aromantic? Have you ever had someone say that before? Yes, people say this to me fairly frequently. My first reaction, privately, is to be annoyed. Because though they don't realize it, they're saying they think my life is easier than their lives, because I don't have the problems they have due to their relationships, lack of relationships, or sexual distractions. It may be true that I don't have those problems, but I have different problems that arise from living in a world that expects me to have those relationships, and I am a frequently dismissed, usually invisible minority. People who claim they want to be like me are ignoring that this happens, and they often will also outright deny that it does. It hurts to hear people say that they'd like to have my life, when what they're really saying is that they, A, have a misconception on what asexuality is, and B, are perceiving me as innocent and carefree, which can come off as infantilizing. What they usually mean when they say they wish they could be like me is that they simply wish they didn't have the problems they do. They may be distracted by their sex drive, fed up with relationships, or in some other way frustrated. But they don't know what they're asking for if they say they wish they could change their sexual or romantic orientation. They're oversimplifying it and essentially saying, you've got it made. Sexuality makes my life so complex. Your life must be easy. And as we all know, being asexual and aromantic is far from easy. But as for what I say to them when they express the wish to be asexual or aromantic, is that I'm sorry they're frustrated with their issues, but that being like me is a different kind of frustrating and complicated. I say that you cannot become asexual or aromantic any more than we could become straight, and as many asexuals have tried to do this during a phase of thinking they're broken, some of us personally know how impossible this is. I usually take care to remind them of the difference between sexual attraction and libido, and I remind them that human relationships are complicated, no matter what orientation you are. And I gently remind them that being a minority that experiences prejudice and erasure would not simplify their lives. Not to mention that some of us find it condescending to be told some outsider believes we have it made in the shade. Being unable to relate to the rest of humanity in a way many people consider fundamental and necessary doesn't isolate us from feeling pain, and it certainly causes it for many of us. I try not to make them feel guilty or scolded for saying/asking something this ignorant, because they honestly don't know that it isn't easy, and don't understand that we won't happily nod and agree that our lives are easier/better. I can get them to understand this more readily if I don't beat them up for saying it, even though it makes me want to pull my hair out when I get talked to like I'm a sweet child who's blissfully unaware of and unfettered by adult problems. Oh, and I normally wish them luck and success on resolving whatever's gotten them frustrated enough to wish they didn't crave sex or romance. And another anonymous person asked me this: I've often found myself wishing that I was asexual/aromantic, but without the shit like alienation that comes with it. I also realize that it doesn't get rid of interpersonal/affection problems. They're just a different sort, I imagine. For me, though, it's part of a general pattern of wanting to be independent and not vulnerable to other people. I think that people feel that if they didn't have the same drives, then they wouldn't be so vulnerable. It often feels like love really isn't worth it. So I replied with this: you have perfectly legitimate issues. It's good to know that you understand being asexual would come with its own issues, which you can't know whether you'd like better than your own without experiencing them. I'd definitely say that some of the drama that arises from others' expectations of us and our being treated like we're selfish or unreasonable if we don't give in to those expectations appears to be as convoluted and difficult to navigate as normatively sexual romantic people describe theirs, especially since people often hang around us waiting for us to change before giving up on us to be with someone who behaves in a more traditional way, completely abandoning us. But it's definitely difficult to feel out of control, too, and to be affected by other people in ways that make you change your behavior or just your feelings in ways you don't like. I have often felt sorry for friends whose attractions prevent them from seeing that someone is using them or taking advantage of them or training them to accept abusive treatment. And I understand how being susceptible to relationships that can grab you by the heartstrings and end up hurting you could be scary. Honestly, I believe that the best relationships are complements, not completions, and that those in romantic relationships can still be as independent as they need to be. My grandparents had a relationship like this, and were noted as odd because throughout their over 60-year marriage, they had separate bedrooms and spent a lot of time apart. My grandmother was a successful singer, and while she was performing on Broadway and touring, my grandfather stayed home. He was interested in tennis, and she was not, so he had his own friends and hobbies. They had their own lives in addition to having a wonderful marriage, but not everyone can forge a connection this way, and there is often quite a lot of interdependence and loss of privacy. I think most aromantic asexuals just don't want to be told that their lives are enviable because their relationships look so uncomplicated from the outside. We'd probably be happier to have conversations with people who are unhappy with aspects of their romantic and sexual orientations if they just did what you do here. Say what the problem really is rather than, I wish I had your problems because I can only see them as advantages even though I've never been you. So if you are someone who is asexual or aromantic or both, and you've ever had someone suggest to you, oh, I really wish that I was ace or that I was aro, I wouldn't have these problems and stuff, what did you say? And how did you feel about it? Maybe kind of taking a different track, do you feel like maybe you have fewer problems than the average Joe? Because I have heard people say that before. I have heard people say they feel some relief at the idea that they don't have to deal with some of the things that seem so difficult. So maybe some of you do feel that way. I think that most of the time that I have heard someone else say this, though, it's different when we say it about ourselves versus when someone else mischaracterizes or oversimplifies our experiences so that they can suggest we have it easier or that they don't actually acknowledge some of the difficulties that we do deal with. I have said before that sometimes we're so invisible that even our invisibility is invisible. That's getting to be less so these days, but it still happens often that people say, I don't understand how you could have any problems. I don't understand how being asexual or being aromantic could really be that difficult, or how it's just this big non-issue. It's this big nothing burger to them. And I think that's only if you see us as floating through space with something missing. A lot of people see that as a disadvantage, like that we don't get to participate in stuff that they really enjoy. But if somebody's going through it, if somebody's having a lot of relationship problems, or they're having a lot of problems getting a relationship and it feels like torture, I can understand why some of them would feel that our lives are enviable. But it's just different problems, and I think on many other issues that have nothing to do with sexuality or romantic orientation, you can see how it would be so easy to just kind of oversimplify someone else's life and say, gosh, I wish I was like them. I wish I had that person's job. I wish I had that person's situation. You might even wish that you had that person's problems if it meant not having your own. But we all have our own struggles, and a lot of the times that people have said that they wished that they were asexual or they wished they were aromantic, to me, it did feel like they were kind of dismissing some of the difficulties we deal with, and that they really think it must be very simple. It must just be their lives with all of the drama removed, and that's not how it is at all. So share your experiences if you've ever had this question or you have thoughts on it now that you've heard some of the discussion. I'm curious what you people think. But for now, I'm going to end this video here, and we'll see you next time I come up with something to share. Thanks for watching.